Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the known world. Welcome to The Crown Between Two Roses. I am Lilia bint Azir, and tonight we are interviewing Duchess Gudrun, who is the first queen of our kingdom and a very good friend of mine. Duchess England is now going to do the acknowledgement of country.
Good nobles, we come here together in the spirit of fellowship, deepening of our skills, sharing of our knowledge, and a shared interest in the search to find truth through experimental archaeology and historical inquiry. It is in this context that I, Duchess England, on behalf of my kingdom, acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we gather. We recognise their continuing connection to land and culture, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and the elders from other communities who may be here today.
Excellent. So, I'm going to first of all apologize because formalities are going to go out the window because I know you so well. So I do apologize to anybody else who takes offense, but I know these ladies very well, and it's probably not going to be the easiest polite conversation from my side of things.
It's all right.
Maybe you know us a little too well.
It's late in the evening. We can do the higher rated version, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, Gudrun, we always ask how people got started in the SCA. So would you like to tell me your story again, please?
I joined the SCA through the College of Blessed Herman the Cripple at Adelaide University. I was doing a course in educational theatre, and one of the other students in my course was in the society and went, I think you'd enjoy this. And I went along to an event that everybody there said was the worst event they've ever been to, but I was hooked anyway. So I have now been playing in the SCA for well over half my life. About 35 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Possibly even longer, if I actually think about it. No, about 35 years.
So what was it that hooked you about that first event that you went to?
I've always been interested in medieval history, but it just combined all of a bunch of my hobbies. I liked sewing, I liked dancing already. I was kind of into dressing up, and I really like to eat. And so it just kind of brought all of those together in the one hobby. So I didn't have to worry that things were going to clash.
So you reigned as princess when we were principality a couple of times as well, haven't you?
I reigned twice as princess and twice as queen.
So how old were you when you first reigned as princess?
1994. So I would have been 22.
That's very young. Were you that young as well, England, when you reigned?
Yeah, well, Theodoric won when I was 22. I stepped up just after I turned 23. So about the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's certainly a thing to come into when you're that young and maybe haven't been playing for very long. You're like, oh, okay.
Well, by that point, I had already been playing for 3 or 4 years, and I guess I didn't dip my toe in when I started. I jumped in the deep end and did everything from stewarding events to hosting practices to running workshops right from the get-go. So, I didn't feel like I was particularly new, but I still did get a bit of peer fear and a bit awestruck by, all the people that you hear the legends about.
So when you first reigned as princess, you weren't a laurel yet, is that right?
No, I was not a laurel until after my first reign as queen.
I was there at that. So why did you change personas? Because initially you were known as Elspeth.
I was Elspeth Turbeville,
Yes.
which is still my registered name because I haven't got around to changing it. When I first joined, I was doing coat hardies and that sort of style, and I also did a very bad foray into Tudor. But then in my second reign as princess, we did Norse, and I fell in love with the period and the clothes and the culture, and changed my persona name to match my new passion.
Yeah. So I love the fact that every time somebody says, "Do you like my Viking?" to you, you do not jump down their throat and explain to them that Viking is actually a doing word, not a cultural period. What is one of the things that you find the most entertaining when people find out that you're a Norse Laurel?
Oh. I don't know. You get asked a lot of questions about the primary sources, and a lot of people don't realize that the Norse primary sources, it's like you can't walk into a museum and look at a great big picture and go, oh, look at that fine line on the picture. You know, I'm sure you remember, Lilia, when we went to the museum and we saw the Viking exhibition of, because you see in the books the pictures of the Valkyrie medallions, and they're always like pictured like this big, but really they're this big.
They're like tiny Valkyries.
Yeah. So one line can mean so many things.
It can. And just, you know, introducing people to the scarceness of the research. So.
Were there many other people doing Norse at the time that you started getting interested in it?
In Lockhart, there was no one else doing Norse when I first did it. So basically we were starting in Lockhart, we were starting from scratch, where there was a few people over in other parts of the known world that were doing it, but back then it was a lot harder to get in contact with them. There was the internet wasn't what it is today, so you couldn't just jump on a chat group and chat to 50 different people about the one topic. Hello?
Yeah, we're still here. We can see you, but you just can't see us.
Obviously, my computer went to sleep because I sat still for too long to occasionally move the mouse.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was a lot harder to find the information then than it is now.
I certainly appreciate you paving the way here, because it's a culture that I really enjoy studying, and most of our garb is from the Norse kind of time-ish, spread a bit further forward, a bit further back, and a bit south and a bit west.
Yep. Well, they went all those places, you know.
But now there's such an abundance of that research, and you can really kind of get deep down into some of those cultures that I imagine you couldn't have done even 10 years ago. So thank you. I've benefited from it.
I like the fact that we were at a spring war once and you called yourself a bog laurel, like that was your forte was.
I'm a bog laurel.
I like going through bog finds.
Well, some of the best preserved textile finds are from the bogs.
Yeah. Because
the acidity of the makeup of the soil is what preserves the fabric.
So I'm going to ask you about what the difference was between being a crown princess and a crown itself before we became a kingdom. So what was the main difference that you found, and being the first official Lockhart queen, because we did have a member of our kingdom who had been Queen of the West previously.
Yes.
Was it hard to kind of pave the way, because you are officially our first kind of like Lockhart rose? So
it was a little hard because people were so used to, like, the princes and princesses in Lockhart were different from most of the other principalities because we were so far removed from our parent kingdom. We had a lot of the power that the crown had, but not all of it. People always knew that if they had a problem with it, they could go to the crown. And then suddenly we became kingdom and we were king and queen. And I remember sitting in a peerage meeting at the first coronation, and the peers were like, well, they kept asking, are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure this is what you want? And we're like, we are the crown. This is our, and the looks on their faces of, oh, yeah, there's no one else we can appeal to anymore.
yeah.
That was a big difference, both for us that we couldn't go, oh, I don't know, I'd go and ask him.
Yeah.
But also the rest of the kingdom had to get used to the fact that there was no higher authority anymore to appeal decisions to. And as crown, you had to come to the realization that, you know, when we were a principality and I reigned as princess, there were things that came down from the crown that the populace didn't like. Like in one of my reigns, the fencing ban came in and people got really annoyed at us. I'm like, it wasn't our decision. We didn't do this. This was the crown. And all of a sudden it was like every decision that came out, no, it was us. So you had to be willing to wear your decisions a lot more than you did as prince and princess.
How did you find the confidence to do that in the first reign? Because I imagine that, like, brand new kingdom, you've got all these new traditions and laws starting out and different customs and procedures, and being able to stand your ground and make some kind of definitive statements must have been quite difficult.
It was hard, but I had a really good group of friends and advisors around me who were willing to back us up when we made decisions. And we realized that as long as we had our reasons and believed in those reasons and could justify them to other people, they might not agree with us, but if we had the justification, it made it that much. So it was trying to avoid those random spur of the moment decisions that you make was quite hard, because you had to be able to say, no, I've thought about this and this is what we feel will be best. But there were a lot of meetings as well before we went kingdom. Meetings about laws and meetings about awards and meetings about ceremonies.
So were you actively involved in that process in the lead up to going kingdom?
Until the vote went through, I was not actively involved. And I actually have to admit that when the vote happened, I actually voted no. I didn't think we were ready to be a kingdom. I'm very happy that I've been proved wrong, because I think Lockhart is doing amazing things. But once Alpha had won the crown, we really stepped in and were very actively involved in all of the planning from that point onwards.
How long was it between the crown tourney and coronation?
The crown tourney was held at Rowaney Festival, so it was March or April, and then the coronation was July.
That's still a pretty quick time to come up with all of those new things.
A lot of it had already been done. Like the basis for the laws had been outlined, and they had selection of awards that they thought would be appropriate. We did have to change it because they had the golden tear and the golden leaf and the golden lily, and we told them we're not having a golden shower in Lockhart.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, not a good idea. So, and the best bit was that none of them had actually thought of that at the time. So like, oh yeah, not a good idea.
Definitely not.
So
Yeah.
I'm really keen. Oh,
You go.
sorry.
No, I was going to ask, were you not tempted to make some of the Kingdom Awards more Norse focused?
It was tempting, but I knew that it was not just for me. Right, these were awards that were for the kingdom.
Yep.
And for the populace. We did. Been so long now. I'm sure we had at least one Norse award, and yeah, I knew that, you know, it was, if we tried to do everything Norse, we were going to piss people off.
Yeah.
And it's not a good idea, because when you step down, you still got to keep playing with them.
That's true.
I'm really keen to hear about how you felt during that first crown tournament. So like throughout the tourney, and then once you kind of realized that you could very like possibly become the first queen, and then in that final. So talk us through your emotional roller coaster today.
Well, we have to start the night before, because up until that point, Alpha had told me he was not entering crown. Not entering. No, don't want to do it. Not entering. And then at about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, he came and found me, and he's like, we have to go and talk to the lists. And because I did a lot of list running, like I ran the fighter auction tourney and I ran a lot of big tournaments, I thought, oh, maybe they're having problems setting up the tournament. Okay, I'll go and talk to them. And we walk up to the table and he goes, we're entering crown. I'm like, okay, sure. So I wasn't at all prepared psychologically for it, because I hadn't thought he was entering. And so, and I knew he would make it a fair way through the tourney, and that there was a reasonable chance of him winning. So I wasn't surprised when he made it to the final, but he got to that point and I went, well, that's it. We've lost second. That's awesome. Because he had never, ever beaten Brucey in a tournament before, ever. So I just assumed that was it. And then he won. And it was very surreal.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So we've just been informed that you did have a Yoms Viking as
Yes.
an award.
I knew there was one.
So there you go. I think we
I'm
should have kept that one.
Pretty sure it was a fighting award of some sort. I think they had some problem with registering that name with the College of Heralds, would be why it was got rid of.
Yeah. So you're a laurel in Norse clothing and culture. You're
Yes.
a pelican. You're a
Yes.
duchess. You've been a
Yes.
list mistress. You've been an autocrat.
Yes.
You fought.
Yes, I did fight. I fought heavy and I did archery.
And you also were field marshal for wars and for tournaments.
Yes. I was marshal in charge at 2 Rowaney festivals.
Yeah. So is there anything that you haven't done that you want to do in the SCA?
Spend more time with my friends. from here.
You're looking for a map. A map of the next stage. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So,
I still enjoy my sewing, and I still enjoy a bit of dancing, and don't really have the time to run events at the moment. So yeah.
but your focus is more family orientated now in a way, because you have a young Viking yourself at home.
I do have a young Viking. That's why we were late starting, because he wouldn't go to sleep.
And I call him a Viking because he is a bit of a marauder at times.
Oh yeah. He's 8 now. Well, he will be 8 in a week and a half. And he is what proved that Roweny Festival really does run itself.
Yep.
Because the last time I was stewarding for Roweny Festival, I didn't end up able to go to the event because he was due to be born on the Tuesday after Easter.
Wow.
So I was 9 months pregnant.
And you still were the steward?
I was still the steward. I did everything up to the event, and then I had site stewards run everything on site.
That's crazy.
Well, that describes me, yeah, pretty much.
So is he into SCA stuff? Does he go along to...
He calls it castle parties. We go to castle parties. Because the very first event that he really remembers going to, once he was talking and walking, was at a church here in Katoomba, and he looked at it and he went, "It looks like a castle." He enjoys archery, and yeah, so he hasn't done a lot of boffer, but I'm sure he would love it because he's always running around hitting things with sticks. So.
Awesome. I have so many questions that I have to ask you that are on the page, but I'm just going off script because I know you so well. So I'm going to ask how you're engaging with the SCA at the moment because of our year of the pandemic. Did you take a hiatus and focus on your own work, or did you just go, I'll keep in touch with a certain group of people? So, because I know you have students.
I do have students. I'm really bad at keeping in touch with them. I didn't do a lot during the year, but now that face-to-face stuff has started up again, I taught a class on Norse clothing last month, and we go to archery every other month when it's on. I have missed going to events like feasts and tournaments and being able to actually catch up with people. Hopefully we'll be able to do a bit more of that soon. I had a lot of time at home. I did quite a bit of embroidery. So that's basically what I've been doing.
Like a long Norse winter, and where you spend the time doing your embroidery and your weaving before the summer comes in. Yeah. You're just living the real life. Like
Exactly. But with electricity.
And so
And flushing toilets.
authenticity without the rash.
But maybe on the toilet paper, depending
Yeah.
on what the year it was.
Oh dear. So what is the thing that you enjoyed doing the most in your SAA history? Like, what gave you the most passion?
I have really enjoyed running events. I love to see what I'm organizing come together and watch people enjoy it. But in that same way, I've also, as Crown, you get to see that enjoyment from a different perspective. So, you get to sit up on the high table and you can watch all of the people enjoying what they're doing from that elevated position. You get that broad view, and you also get to see so much more of what people are doing. People want to show you what they've done, whereas when you're just some pleb sitting down the back of the hall with your rowdy mates, they're less likely to come up and show you what they're at. So I like to see what other people are doing as well and what excites them about our game.
Absolutely. Is there something that you've done that you're particularly proud of, an event or a piece of art or something you did as Crown or as Princess?
I did my first illuminated scroll, which I was very proud of, and it was for my father. It was his Award of Arms scroll. So that was really nice that I could learn a new skill and then gift it to someone that is so special to me. So I really, really liked that.
That's very cool. Do you get to see your work? It's often that with illumination.
Oh, he hasn't had it framed or anything. It's sitting on top of a cupboard.
But it's there.
It's there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so often with illumination, I guess, and the scrolls that you pass them on and you never see it again. So it's nice that you can visit.
Yeah.
I guess.
Visit my work. Although I have to admit, I have a whole heap of scrolls that I haven't framed either. So
that can be your next passion, like framing.
No.
Fair enough.
Oh, come on, you'd make some decent Lego frames, I'm pretty sure. So you've obviously given out a hell of a lot of awards to members of the populace.
Yes, I have.
Any particular awards that you have fond memories of giving to people?
Well, there's your court barony.
Yeah.
Is there a story with that presentation, or is
That was my second reign as queen, and at our opening first court of our reign, we called up Lilia's husband, and we called him forward, and we're like, so Bran, you're a pelican and you're a baron, and I hear that you're involved with a young lady who is not of your rank.
scandal?
The look on his face, he thought we were going to strip him of his awards. And we're like, so we need to rectify this. And we called her forward and gave her a court barony.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then I got you back later on.
Yeah, you did.
He absolutely loved being on your guard. Like from the day that he started playing, I think he was in one of your princess's guards, because there's a picture of him with like woad painted on
Yes.
him. And every time he saw Alfara at an event, he would have a chat to him, and then you became like a member of the inner circle. So
Yeah.
made sure that we had a fridge at our campsite for Xander's medication. And
Yes. It was also really cool to be able to give out each of the first peer of each of the three peerages at the time when we went kingdom. So to make the first Knight of Lockhart and the first Laurel and the first Pelican, that being able to set that bar for this is what the peers of Lockhart will be, was such a great responsibility and such a great thrill.
Is that something that you got a lot of consultation from the orders in the lead up to that, like knowing that their advice was going to be like the first peer of that order?
the first night and the first 10 were actually decided before we went kingdom. So we got to ask them with the Crown of the West, and they were given the choice of being done by the King and Queen of the West or waiting and being done by Lockhart. And the fact that they chose that they wanted to be our first peers and they put that responsibility on us was an honour.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
So traditions are something that, like kingdom traditions particularly, something that can be very meaningful to people, and they can kind of come about or they can be put out there on purpose. So is there any traditions that started from your first reign as queen that are around today that you're particularly thrilled to see happen?
And well, I'm still making the princesses' bags that go to the Crown Princess when they win the tournament. That is something that I will try, as long as my fingers work, I'll be trying to make them. I don't actually know what things we started are still going, because I haven't played at a kingdom level for a while now, so haven't been able to travel. I'm sure I'll go to things and I'll go, wow, they still do that.
I absolutely cherish my bags. The first one is practically in tatters. The second one is like pristine because I haven't used it yet.
I was going to say, I knew there was a reason you had to reign again.
I needed a bag upgrade.
Oh dear. So I'm going to ask you a tricky question because I can. You can, and you'll tell me no if you don't want to answer it. I know you well enough that you'll go no. So you've given out all of these peerages and awards, but I was lucky enough to know you when you got your laurel and your pelican, and they weren't the easiest peerages for you to join the orders, were they? Because I had a similar one with my pelican, but you don't swear fealty to the king and queen, for one. You swear fealty to the kingdom because being the queen, and also you had to seriously think about both of them, didn't you, for a little while?
I did. I put a lot of thought into it, and there were a lot of people that had to talk me into, especially the laurel. I had to be really talked into that. By the time I was offered, I was quite jaded about the whole thing. And it was you, Lilia, and Alpha that talked me into it, and reminded me that if I said no, it wasn't just myself I was disappointing. It was all the people that had supported me to get me to that point. And it wasn't my fault or those people's fault that the council and the Crown had taken such a long time to offer it to me. But it was a very hard decision, and I really did come very close to saying no.
And then you did your ceremony in Old Norse.
I swore my fealty in Old Norse.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of it?
Some of it.
She
has it written down for when you're ready.
I do have it written down. Her expert amni och Hendy at Hildi at Konensgasi Lockach.
There you go.
Very cool. So your journey to peerage, did you find that quite difficult? Because you're obviously studying something that wasn't very common at the time, and you'd seen what it's like to sit in on council meetings and the process behind the scenes as well. So do you feel that when you were eventually offered that kind of anguish about the decision, was impacted by the fact that you'd seen what happens in council and I'm not really sure what my question is. But
I do think it was.
argumentative.
I do think it was a little impacted by having seen it from both sides. It wasn't helped by one of the worst memories I have of my work towards my laurel is a Laurel Prize tourney at festival, where I had researched and reconstructed the pattern for a pair of the Thorsbjerg trousers from the bog, and I had changed the pattern and made it fit Alpha, who is not at all the shape that the Thorsbjerg trousers are. Admittedly, there is no human that is that shape because they've stretched in the bog. You'd have to be like 7 foot tall and 50 kilos. But I'd done all this work and I had hand sewn them on this fabric, and a couple of the laurels walked up to them and looked, picked it up and went, "Oh, it's brown wool," and turned around and walked off. They didn't ask me any questions about my work. It just showed me that they obviously weren't interested, and that sort of attitude to what I was doing, it didn't have sparkle and it didn't have bling and there was no velvet, and so obviously it wasn't interesting and it didn't deserve the laurel. That was the attitude that I was getting from people all the time.
And that's obviously impacted on how you interact with other people who are showing you things now. So like Lily was saying earlier, that you're so supportive of everyone in their arts.
Well, I know that what you see on the surface, the end finished product, is such a small part of the work that's gone into it. All of the research that's gone into it, and the thought and the trial and error of these processes to get what may look like an insignificant little finished object. But it's not the object that people are proud of, the work that's gone into it. So I think supporting people's enthusiasm to do that work behind the project is what I like to do.
When I make Norse, which is ironic because I'm not a Norse laurel or costumer, it's all based on your early costuming, because you're the one who taught me how to do Norse, and it took you 2 years to get me to disengage from the 8 meters of fabric for a late period skirt and the curvature of like whalebone corsetry and go, "Come on, Lil, please stop bringing me up about straight lines."
Really, it is straight lines.
Straight line, it works. Just trust me. So do you look at people's Norse costuming now and you go, oh, like, because I know I tell people when I do ANS classes, I tell people the story of the strands of beads. Yeah, because it's such an amazing story that you told me. And also the side part of the apron dress, I don't know what it's called, a period, and how you rotate it to show that it could be like part of a pants.
Yes.
To me, how you've taught me how to look at patterns and how you've taught me how to like engage with people, to say that, where our thought process and our theories evolve with more information. So I'm going to ask you to tell people about the strands of beads, because I think it's a great example of how the SEA costumes have evolved and how it's okay to make mistakes, kind of thing.
Just the number of strands.
Yeah.
Well, you'll be pleased to know I'm only wearing one today. When a lot of people started doing Norse, it was all about strands and strands of beads that went all down past you, almost past your knees. Some of them were wearing them. And at the time, all of the research I could find showed that the maximum number of strands of beads that they'd found in a single grave was 3. And the thing that glass in the Norse era and area was exceedingly expensive. We're fortunate now that it's really cheap. So, every single bead would be expensive. It was showing your wealth. People couldn't afford to have 6 and 7 strings of beads. That was too many. And it also hinders how you work.
And go to the privy.
And go to the privy. Yes.
If you have to sit with your apron just like cupped up to hold all your beads so they don't fall into the privy and you're wearing too many. Like,
yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
what they told me one night in a tavern. It's a practical thing, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know what though? Like, how good is it that even though that we know that period-wise you only had maybe 1 string of beads, and then if you're really, really wealthy, you've got the 3. But in the SCA, we can wear 4 or 5 and it's party beads and we can jingle our way to the tavern and it's great. And like, you're not putting it in for an A&S competition, or you're not trying to say, this is me being period. This is me having fun.
Yeah.
It's
exactly
knowledge about the correct, or not the correct, the period way to do things. We know what it is, but we can still bling up just to feel pretty, or to jingle when we dance or whatever. It's
exactly
that's a fun kind of environment. Yeah,
it is. And some people often need to be reminded of that the SCA is a game. We do it because we enjoy it. If we start being that strict with it, people are not going to enjoy it as much. If they want to do the exact perfect replica where they've shorn the sheep and spun it and woven it themselves, there are groups out there that do that.
But we accept that as well. Like,
oh yeah, but if they want everyone around them to do that, there are groups out there that do it.
Yeah, that's right. There's as much as I love the Norse culture, there's like you were saying, there's a piece of brown wool. It doesn't quite have the same bling as some of the later period garments.
Yeah, and I have
cool jewelry.
There is some very cool jewelry, and I have to admit I may have influenced people to put a lot more embroidery on their clothing than they could. Because that's the other thing. I find I have to be really careful about what I wear, because so many people do look at me and go, well, she's a Laurel, she obviously must know what she's doing. That must be period. It's like, not always. Sometimes I just want to have fun.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. I have moments like, I still wear the Magnuses. Right?
Oh, Magnus! Yay!
Not our tech guy.
No.
A bearskin over my shoulders. I drag Magnus around. No, Gudrun traveled to some of the Norse digs over in Europe, and when she told me she was going, I asked her to bring me back a Norseman, right, as you do, like in jest. And she came and came the first time, and there was a little like pewter like Viking that I was like,
it was a key ring.
And I was like, awesome. And I put him on a strand of beads. I wear him.
And his name is Magnus.
And then the next time she went, I said, well, you know what I'm going to ask for. And she brought me a different one back, and I wear that Magnus as well, because they're all called Magnus. It's just standard name for all of them. So,
yep.
But I love that kind of thing, because it makes me remember that there is supposed to be fun. Like it's supposed to be enjoyable. And if it's not, then you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
So what I want to see is everyone who goes to any kind of Norse or Viking exhibition or travels to Europe and goes to the museums over there, bring Lilia back a little Magnus figurine. I want to see one of those necklaces, like the
fish necklace,
like the fish ones, or Magnuses.
Just Magnuses.
It's a star across my neck. Nobody's going to want to hug me. Awesome.
Amazing.
So, what is one of your most favorite memories of being queen? Do you have different ones from different reigns, or is it one outstanding? Surely there's been a lot of things given to you or gestures that have shown people how much respect that they had for you and have for you and Alfar. And I know you're not like a couple anymore, but obviously your history is entwined because you reigned together.
I think one of my fondest memories is actually from when I was princess. The very first time I was princess, I set my princess's guard a quest. I asked them to search the known world and find and present to me a beast of fairy. And Sir Eves, before he was knighted, he was on my princess's escort, and he went out and he caught for me a fire fairy. And he did fire dancing at Spring War without his shirt on. And that was pretty awesome that, you know, he took my request and ran that way with it and presented to me this entertainment of the fire fairies dancing with him that could also entertain the entire populace. So it was very cool. But there are so many amazing things that I got to do because I was queen that you just can't number them all.
If you had the opportunity, would you reign again?
Yes. I really enjoyed it. Probably not with Alpha, though.
Well, you're both married to your significant others now, so it might be a little bit awkward.
and we both have kids, so.
So who are your inspirations in the SEA? Because you were saying that when you started, you had a level of peer fear. And I think it's funny. When I tell people I still have a level of peer fear, it's just I'm afraid of the peers on both sides of my elevations now, like the ones coming up. I think, oh my God, they know so much more than I do. And the ones who are elevated before me, I kind of think, oh my God, I can't believe that you had to deal with so much shit before you got recognized. So do you have inspirations on either side of your peerages?
Well, you have always, since I met you, have inspired me to continue playing and to find the fun in it again. When I first joined the society in Inelgard, it was Chaos and Brini and Tovi, and my brain has just totally lost the name of his wife. But there are so many peers now that are doing such amazing things, and people that aren't peers as well. Like, my students keep me motivated because I want to be able to support them. And having moved up to the Blue Mountains to a small, slightly isolated group, you know, supporting them has become important. So just so many people. It's hard to list them all.
Do you have peer fear with anybody?
A few still. We're not going to name names.
Okay, fair.
Because they might watch it.
That's fair enough. We'll just leave it at that.
Who are your students, and are they students in for the Laurel Path or for the Pelican Path?
I have 2 Laurel Path students and 1 Pelican. So I have Crosby and Lillian, for the Laurel, and Alona is my protege.
Awesome. This is a Lillian made shirt. Very beautiful.
Lovely.
I think I've got some Rothney beads on here somewhere as well. So I'm sure for your students' work.
Excellent.
So is there any no shit there I was stories that you can share with us, remembering you and I have to face each other again in an event? And others.
Can't think of anything at the moment.
Can't think of anything.
But
I have so many good stories. It's
That's out of the rating that I'm allowed to tell. And I actually have a pretty bad memory for events until people remind me of them. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
I was telling somebody recently about you winning at card games because there was 5 queens.
Oh yes. Playing poker. And I win because I have 5 queens.
She counted herself as one, so we were like, oh, it can't be that.
Pretty much.
Oh dear.
That might have slightly been helped by the fact that my guardsman had a half dozen cards up his sleeve.
Well,
It was the point at which the dealer said to us, okay, well, we can't deal the next hand because we don't have enough cards. And people were pulling them out of all sorts of places.
I warn people not to play Tablero with you. It's always...
I don't really drink anymore, so I think I'd be under the table in no time at all.
I love telling the story about the hay bale igloo in the middle of the green.
Yes, we did build an igloo out of hay bales and sit inside it.
Until it started to creak, and then we thought, oh, this is going to come down on top of it.
It's going to be bad.
Out like shot.
I'm surprised someone didn't just jump on it. And
it was before the event had started.
Yeah.
So there were only like 4 people on site. And so we built this where they delivered all the hay bales and we had to help unload them. So we thought, well, what are we going to do with them now?
An igloo.
Build an igloo.
That was fun. And Pop, I love as founding members of Pop. Which really needs to be picked up by other people.
It does. Well, we can't do it now. We're both peers, and
I think you need to explain what POP is.
It's partners of peers, because as a partner of a peer without being a peer yourself, you always have to turn up to the Kingdom events early in the morning because there's bound to be an 8 or 9 o'clock peerage meeting of some sort. And then your partner goes off to this peerage meeting. Nobody else has turned up yet except the other partners of peers. So we started a group.
we did, with Vandal of all people.
Conga
originally, and then Vandal was in the second one. So yeah, that was funny.
It was Conga originally, and then Vandal and Asa, and
Yes.
there were a few other people.
Yeah.
And then when I was elevated to the Laurel, my partner Ladislaus joined Pop. And then after our son was born, he wanted to change the name of it to Poop to make it partners and offspring of peers.
Clever.
Yeah.
And I told him that we already had enough poop in our lives. We didn't need to do
that. Yes. I do think it should be expanded though, because there was some fun, not apart from the drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning, there was some fun conversations about the fact that you could almost predict who was going to be elevated next. like in our group.
I think I missed most of the heyday of pop, and I was like wanting to get theatre elevated just so I could come to the party. I'm like, come on, hurry up. And then once you did, it kind of, everyone else got elevated. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh well. I'll start it up again.
Yeah, up to you. You start it up again.
It'll just be me and my kid.
There's some pretty cool people out there who haven't reached the acknowledgement of peerage yet, but they
say that
are there.
Ladislaus will be there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And Hella's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know.
We need a babysitter. So we need to, like, I don't know, put all the kids in a playpen or something.
Xander's a bit big for playpens now.
Is he big enough to babysit?
No.
What you need to do is try and get somebody to train them, do buffer training with them on the sideline. They've got an activity plan. So next crown, we should encourage them to do the peerage meeting, but run a buffer training at the same time so Pop can run. That'd be the way to go.
Yep.
So Gudrun, you've moved around a little bit. Is there a event or a place that you really feel like it's where you come home to for in the SCA? Like, is there a particular event where you just show up and you're like, this is my place?
Probably Tokal. I have always loved that event ever since it started. Just the fact that because you're staying on site, you're not in tents, because I don't actually like camping. The party doesn't have to break up. It sort of dissipates at its own rate, and just the people that go to the event are there's generally a lot of my friends at that event. So that would probably be my favourite.
And Mordenvale always put on a good feed too.
Oh, they do. They know how to feed you.
And the bacon, the hangover bacon, so good.
Oh, yeah.
So I was there at both of your Laurel and your Pelican, and you did get Pelican in Adelaide.
I did get my Pelican in Ilgard.
Yes. Is there a reason why you decided to go out of your own local group?
Ilgard is the group where I started. It meant that my father could be there because obviously if I did his AOA, he plays SCA, but he doesn't travel much outside of the group. And it was the last event where Sheridan and Margie were going to be king and queen. So those were the main reasons why I went.
Cool.
And chose that one.
I had to catch a flight, I'm just saying. Get elevated.
I do remember there were 2 Pelicans done at that event, and I was done second, and I was standing at the back of the hall with Rosny.
Yes.
And they called up, they start the Pelican ceremony and they call up the order of the Pelican, and then they called up Yevon, and Rosny just standing next to me, she turned to me with this flower on her face and went, "That should be you." And I just had to bite my tongue because I knew that mine was coming. At the same event later in that same court. And nobody knew. I hadn't told anyone out. In fact, most of the order didn't even know that it was happening.
I can remember Mistress Portia, basically standing up in shock and awe when your name got called and screaming at the top of her lungs, like that you were getting done. I was like, oh, it's so cool. getting to the end of our hour, believe it or not. So is there any other story that you would like to tell us about, or is there something that you would like to say to the populace of Lockhart that will be watching this video now and in the future?
No other stories I can think of, but as we've said a few times during this, the SCA is a game. It's a great game and we love it, and some people get really, really involved in it, and that's great. But if it's not fun, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
You need to find what it is in it, that the passion within the SCA that brings you joy and fun. And the people as well, because the SCA is its people. And there are some pretty awesome ones.
Absolutely.
Oh. Well, on that note, I will say our farewells, because if you've read my post this week, I've got 2 interviews, one with Gudrun, and then the last one is with Bridget and Giles on Friday. But I would like to thank everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank Gudrun, because there's times when I felt like throwing the towel in and telling everybody to and she's been one of the few people who's actually gone, it's okay if you decide to stop playing, but I'll miss you. And it's made me stay. And she's made it fun for me, in many ways. I'd like to thank Eglin for stepping up and being the new hosts, one of the new hosts who are going to refresh this whole idea and make it a good and fun idea for others. But would like to thank the populace who come and join us and watch the videos, for bringing the gnome world closer to home and expanding out our knowledge, the knowledge of Lockhart and its people, to the known world itself. If you like our videos, please subscribe, tell people about us, join in, and encourage your friends to get to know us and for us to get to know them. Thank you very much for joining us and this great medieval village that is worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there you go.